that in the comments. I'm going to tell you how I know these ladies. So I know these ladies because Jenna was my roommate while I was in school at Stephen F. Austin State University, Action Jacks. And Jenna was the first roommate that I had that I feel like I let into my heart and my life. Not that I didn't love my roommates previously, but I just remember coming home and seeing Jenna and Taylor Leonard and Gracie on my couch and being like, and they'd be like, so tell us about your day. And I'll be like, what are y'all waiting on me for? What is happening? I was really confused. But then as it kept going, and one day I came home and they weren't sitting out in the living room. And I was like, where are my friends at? Like, come on, guys, ask me about my day. I want to talk to you. And so, yes, I really am like, I'm appreciative of Jenna. That's my girl. And then I met Bree when we went to Bree. When did I meet you? I feel like I met
I know when we met. We met.
Go ahead. We were getting ready to go to San Francisco. Is that right?
No, before that. We met in 2017 with Jamal because we had a conference at Mosaic in Nacogdoches.
Yes. I do remember that. Shout out to Jamal. We did meet then at the Mosaic conference, and then I got to know Bree a lot better in San Francisco, where she almost got us kidnapped. But that's neither here nor there.
We did not get kidnapped, y'all. Okay.
Almost. But I grew to love Bree so very, very much. Bree challenged me to be a better friend and a better human. And you need people like that in your life. And so I'm very excited to share these two lovely ladies with you guys today because their stories are impactful. And I know that the story of mental health can be something that's very difficult if it's not something that you're accustomed to. And I know that because of my own mental health journey, because of me starting counseling, how long it took me to even get into counseling myself, because I was afraid of what that looked like, because I was afraid of the stigma that came with that. I'll tell you this story before we get started. I remember it was after my dad passed, and this isn't something that I share with a whole lot of people. I remember why I wanted to get into counseling and why I started going to counseling for myself. So I wanted to get into counseling was because my dad was very, very sick. And I remember sitting with him at home and just talking with him through what he was going through, right? And listening to just, because he was going through some real stuff. He was suffering from transverse myelitis. It was the things that were weighing heavy on his mind all the time. And there were like waves of emotions. And I remember sitting with him a lot of that time and just hearing him talk through what he needed to talk through that was in his head. And after he talked through those things, seeing the change in his demeanor and the change in his mentality. And I just to be encouraged and to feel like somebody heard you and didn't try to fix you. And I was like, man, I wonder how beneficial it would have been for him to have a counselor through this process, especially because I was taking on a lot of that. Like I know many of the members in my family were taking on a lot of that, and that added stress to us. And not to say that I didn't want to talk to my dad, because I definitely did, but it was definitely heavy to carry the emotional weight for him. And so I can see the benefit of having a counselor. And I want to be able to be that for another family that may be struggling through those seasons of just emotional waves of how to be a guide to that. So that's what drew me to go to counseling, to go to school to become a counselor. But I remember specifically what drew me to go to counseling, which is I was really struggling after my dad passed away. Really, really, really struggling, like hardcore struggling, like I was hardcore struggling with that. Emotionally doing things that were out of my character, just a lot of different things I was struggling with. And I went to a doctor and they prescribed me with depression medicine super quick, like right after I went in. It was my first time going to see him because I was trying to find a primary care doctor. Let me just say, being an adult, you don't realize the stuff that you be needing to do. If you don't have a primary care physician, go find one. And so I was trying to find one, and I was like interviewing different ones. And I went to one, and she immediately prescribed me with depression medicine. And I remember getting that prescription and thinking I may be depressed, but then calling my mom and my sister on the phone and being like, but I don't want to be prescribed this medicine, though. Like, I feel like that's saying something about me. Like, I can handle this by myself. I remember crying, thinking like something is wrong with me because they prescribed this to me. I remember going to CVS pharmacy and handing the lady my prescription and her looking at me and being like, oh. And I was like, and it just reiterated that something is wrong with me. Like, I am broken. And I remember after that, I got the prescription for the medicine. I put it on my shelf and I was like, I'm not going to take this. And I remember talking to my mom and my sister, and they were like, nothing is wrong with you. that you may need help, and it's okay to get the help that you need. And so just realizing the stigma that may come with taking medicine or going to see a counselor or come with all of these things is just a part of us not wanting to admit that we're broke and not wanting to admit that we need help. And so that was a big part of why I was like, I need to get the help that I need. Like, I can't keep putting this off because I'm only going to drive the people around me crazy if I continue down the path that I'm going down. And so, yeah, that's what started me on my mental health journey for sure, is my dad passing, somebody giving me depression medicine, wrestling with whether I was going to take that or not. I just knew I needed to take care of myself. And so I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys about mental health today. The first question that I want to ask you is, when you think about mental health, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? What comes to your mind that you want to share that when you think about mental health? Whoever wants to start us.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is everyone needs to pay attention to their mental health. I think for a long time, it was a word that was very stigmatized. But now when I think of mental health, I think of everyone, because it's not just a select few people who need to pay attention to mental health. It's everyone needs to pay attention to their mental health.
Yeah, that's good.
For me, when I think of mental health, I think of wellness. It's something that we're affected by daily. When you think about America, just alone, like 1 in 4 adults have a mentally diagnosable like illness, and only 36% of that population is being treated. So yeah, mental health is super important. Like, if we don't have that, we have nothing.
That's so good. Even I was reading the other day, and it was saying that like 30% of people that are diagnosed with depression specifically even take their medicine. Like, the rest of them are not taking their medication. And I think that it may even have a lot to do, this is just me thinking through this, y'all, so bear with me. It may even have a lot to do with the sayings that we say about, like, it's a hard pill to swallow. Like, those kind of things that we say around medicine, that we kind of associate medicine with pain. We associate medicine with being something that's hard. And because of that association, it's hard for us to say, I'm going to take this medicine, because we associate it so negatively. And so I'm just here to tell those that are watching and to encourage myself that if you are prescribed with something, it's all right. Like, it's not, you're okay. Take your medicine if that's what you've been prescribed. Make sure that you do the research, that you pray through it, that you do what you need to do to make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself. But don't feel like you are less than, or there's something that's wrong with you because you're being prescribed something. I just don't want that to be the case. And so my next question is, why do you think that, this is something that the people on Facebook answered too, so let me go to those comments, is why do you think that it's difficult for some people to tell the truth about their mental health? And if you're watching this, and can you answer that for me in the comments too? Why do you think that it's difficult for some of us to tell the truth about our mental health, or to just face it?
I think a lot of it is the labels that come with it. I think even now, like, I'm nervous. It makes me nervous to say, like, what I've actually been diagnosed with or what traits I've been told I have, because I'm a professional. So it's like, what are people going to think, of a professional that may have these mental health labels? And so I think that's one thing. I think I grew up in the church, and I love growing up in the church. I'm still very active in the church, but I think I heard a lot from the pulpit, and not necessarily the church I grew up in, but just nationwide, the pulpit, you would hear, isn't it a shame that whatever the statistic is, amount of adults struggle with depression or they're on depression medication. And so it was very, even in the church, it was very like, I get that people are trying to show the brokenness of the world, but it's like, these are people who are on these medications. And so using these like almost shame tactics to keep people away from medication was not helpful. So it keeps people hiding their what was the original question you asked?
To tell the truth about their mental
health.
Yeah,
it keeps people from telling the truth about what's going on with their mental health, because if they're on medication and they hear like, well, Christians should just pray through it, then they think I can't say anything about this, or I'm going to be labeled in the church as like not a good Christian or not whatever. And so I think there's, a couple of aspects, and then nobody wants to be labeled with anything, right? And so I think that's kind of a big one. But I think those are the two big ones for me, is like, what are people going to think if I'm a professional and I struggle with mental health? And what are people in the church going to think if I can't just pray through it, and it do that.
Yeah, that's really good, Jenna. I agree with what she said. When I think about why people choose to avoid looking more into their mental health and speaking their truth about it, it's because they're fearful. Um, I think people may view mental health as like judgment day for the
Yeah.
believer or for the non-believer, really. People are scared to like dig up those bones that they've been hiding for a long time and like take off that mask. But the unfortunate thing is that, you know, avoidance causes stagnation. So the more that we avoid the things that we,
Come on, Lisa.
the more that we,
Bars you want to spit on the video today? Say it again.
but seriously, avoidance causes stagnation. So the more that we choose to avoid, you know, the truth of our brokenness and the truth of our pain and where our trauma comes from, the more that we dive deeper into darkness, into depression, into these disorders that we see. Like, you know, think about the celebrities who we hear about who commit suicide. They're masking their pain with money and fame and sex and drugs and all that stuff, but really they're hurting and they're deep in their hurt, so much so that they are willing to just cancel themselves out and, you know, not even look into mental health or reach out to the sources, the resources that they have.
Yeah.
So it's really, mental illness is super important. And I would just say, don't be afraid to look into that truth because it's there.
Yeah. But seeing the truth, I think that truth is a hard thing because it feels like once you expose the truth about yourself, that it may be too much. And I think specifically about a story in the Bible that's been on my heart like a lot lately. And it's about the woman at the well, right? And I read that story and I hear how Jesus starts to tell her these things about herself, about how she doesn't have one husband, she has this many, and about how she should, and all of these things. And I read that, and then instantly my heart inside is like, Jesus, like, why are you talking to her in that way? Why are you telling her all of these things about herself? Like, it feels like rude, like, oh, like, why are you doing that? But to know that she received that truth about herself and she wanted to respond in a way that says, this man told me everything about myself. Come and see a man. And why is it that we can't receive truth in that same way? You know, why isn't it that truth doesn't change us in that same way, the same way that it changed that woman at the well? And so I think that you're onto something there when you're talking about being able to speak the truth about yourself, because the church, I don't want to put a bad rap on the church because I think that the church has done the best that they could with the information that they had. When I think about where even we are in mental health now, I don't know that it's been so on the forefront, the conversation about mental health. Like I can't really pinpoint the point in my life where people started talking about mental health so much. But I do think that even for myself, that it was a point where I was like, why can't I pray this away? Like, am I not being a good enough Christian? Am I not saying the right things? Like, Lord, I'm asking you to help me with this. Like, why aren't you helping me with this? And knowing that God told us to love him and to love people and to be in community with people and to be able to operate in that community in a way that allows you to be transparent and use the help that is around you. And so, yeah, I think that it's super important for us to know that it's okay to ask for help. That there's the poet Preston Perry talks about Jesus in therapy. He talks about who gives a Black man permission to feel. Like it's so important for us to be able to say that I'm hurting and I need somebody to talk to about what's going on with me, because I know that this isn't normal and I want the help that is going to be required in order to be able to be, even using the word normal, it's like, what is normal? Ain't nobody normal. Don't nobody know what's going on. Like, it is just being an adult. And we'll talk about this even more in the future ones where we'll talk about like what it's like to be an adult after college. I tell my teenagers all the time, it's like throwing things at the wall and hoping that it sticks. That is what being an adult is. Nobody has a plan. Nobody knows. They're doing the best they got with the cards that they've been dealt and just throwing stuff on the wall. And one of these times they're like, oh, that worked. Like, let me keep going in this direction. And so even my mom, she posted it below. She said, mental health is a disease like heart disease. It's serious and needs attention from appropriate professionals. That's why you my mama, girl. That's why. I see you, woman, out here in these streets telling the
Miss Stoker. I want to speak real quick to you and Jenna talking about the church and mental health. I don't know if y'all watch Pastor Mike Todd, but that man is phenomenal in his ministry. He mentioned yesterday how people always talk about, let's just pray it away. Let's just pray that problem away. But God gives us steps. Like when when scripture says that God orders our steps, like steps is going to counseling, steps is reaching out to your community, steps is like seeking those resources, whatever it may be on social media or whatever. And the church typically wants to pray everything away. And I do believe in Jesus. I'm a firm believer in Jesus, but we have to be more open. The church needs to stand more boldly on mental health, I believe, and just let people know like you're not alone in the situation, and there is nothing wrong with you for going through the things that you're going through. So y'all made some really good points on that.
Because prayer works, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that you can't do other steps along with praying.
Right. That's why we got faith without works. Like you can't just have the faith and not have the works. What you doing?
That's the part.
Right.
You need to be a rapper. Go ahead,
I think I have one thing I want to say about that too. I kind of like this little topic we're rolling on right now. So I think that's a big part of my story is I got really angry at God because I was like, I'm praying that you'll take these things away and you're not taking them away. And by no means do I think God put those things in my life. I don't think he gave me mental illness. I don't think that. I think that's the brokenness of the world. I think that is, I think that's what that is. But I think that God put those steps in front of me and he said, I'm going to teach you how to be a fighter. I'm not going to take this away from you because you'll never learn to grow and you'll never steward this earth like I meant for you to if you don't learn how to fight through these things. So I think for me, he was teaching me how to fight. It wasn't I'm not going to take this away because you need to suffer. It was like, no, this is how you get strong. You get strong by working out. You get strong by training. So we're going to train you through this. So
that's so good. That's so good. There's this book that I'm reading now that I'll share with y'all too, even after this, because I feel like as going into counseling, it's a beneficial book to read. It's by John McMahon, and it talks about psychology, theology, and spirituality. And he talks about like recognizing your sense of need and being okay with that sense of need, because that puts you in a place to be reliant and dependent on Christ. And so just like being able to say like, Lord, this is something that I am in constant need of you to walk with me through. And that creates us in places to be fighters because we're able to be dependent on the one who is ultimately victorious, that is not us, that is the savior of the world. And I think, Gina, you own the song talking about working out. Yes, ma'am. That's why y'all on. Give them a round of applause. Come on, y'all. Y'all out here in these Facebook streets. So the next question that I have for you guys is we're going to get a little more personal, if it's okay. And I want you to know that I don't want you to share things that you feel like would not be good for your career moving forward. But I want to put that out there. Like Facebook don't need all your business. Just know that. But how did you start your journey to be mentally healthy? I shared a little bit about how I started mine at the beginning with going to see my primary care physician and kind of falling into the steps of knowing that I needed to go see a counselor. How did you guys get into your journey for mental health?
So I think for me is looking back, it probably started about in high school and I just didn't realize what was happening. But when I got to college, I was known as the girl who cried. I don't know if you remember this, Jazz, but I couldn't make it through a community group without crying. It was like, what is going on? And I wouldn't even be sad. It was just like, couldn't make it through a community group without crying. So I think for me is, it's playing back. I was like, that's my voice. Anyway, and so that is kind of how it started. And then my emotions got to be more unstable in relationships and things like that. And so for a long time, I was like, well, it just must be something spiritual. Like, let me just keep like trying to pray this away. It's got to be something spiritual. And then I think it took me probably a year and a half, maybe longer, to realize I think this might be a mental health issue. But that's kind of what got me started in my mental health journey, is having a lot of relational turmoil, unstable emotions, and not really knowing where those came from.
Yeah. And I think that in juxtaposition to you, Jenna, like I said, that we were roommates too, is that here's something I learned about myself that I'll share on this video. This is like fresh off the press. Like I just talked to my therapist about this last week. It's in juxtaposition to you. So you feel very deeply. I remember that about you in college. My sister is a lot like that too, that she's very thoughtful and very like, she feels very deeply. And I look at myself, and not that I don't have feelings, because I know that I can be emotional, because Disney can make me like it can send my emotions quick. And I even know being in relationship with people and being close to my close friends, like I know that I feel deeply, that I can be empathetic, but there's a part of me that like closes off those feelings. It's like, nope, I ain't finna be weak today. Like, not today. I'm a G. Like, I'm not crying here. I'm not gonna let nobody else see me cry. Like, I'm not gonna allow the situation to make me look hurt. No, it's a big, like, it can be a big pride thing for me. I know in juxtaposition to Jenna, I remember some days watching you feel and being like, Lord, like, why I'm not feeling nothing? Like something, I need to pray so I can feel some stuff. Cause I just be like, I just not emotional. No, not today.
Meanwhile, I'm in the next room and I'm like, why does Jasmine have her life together so well? What's wrong with me?
I was
That's
struggling
crazy.
too. Ain't that something? We was both struggling.
See how the enemy works.
He does.
But for me, first off, just regarding counseling, I did not think that I was going to want to become a therapist growing up. Throughout middle school and high school, I had a lot of friends who I grew very close to, and a lot of them would come to me with their issues, whether it be like relationship problems, family problems, whatever. And I was just always that go-to friend, and I just felt comfortable listening. I felt comfortable giving them advice and encouraging them. And for the longest, I always thought like, man, like it really gives me peace to like see that they're getting their issues resolved through my advice or through my encouragement or through my prayer. What I would later find out is that was codependency. The ability for me, and codependency is, for those that don't know, codependency is this excessive emotional dependency on someone else or something, just as someone can be codependent to alcohol or drugs or whatever. It's that same dependency on people. And so I grew really codependent on like friends needing me and me always being there for them. And even deeper than that, I hadn't really rooted up the issues that I had going on with my family. So growing up, if my mom and dad was sitting right here, they'd be like, just make sure you remember this. Like, I had everything growing up. I had summer vacations, big birthday celebrations, like anything you could think of, like I was spoiled in all of that. But there were a lot of communication issues that I had with my parents. And it took a long time for me to really understand the gist of it. Like a lot of the time I blamed it on their lack of understanding me or their lack of supporting me or their lack of whatever. But I came to realization that that's just the brokenness and the sin that's in the world. That had nothing to do with them. And so I really just had to unlearn a lot of things that I learned growing up, like how to communicate effectively with someone, how to set boundaries with people, how to be assertive, but also how to love people genuinely. Like I had to learn that along the way. But it took a lot of self-care, and I know we'll talk about that later. So yeah, it came from just me wanting to get healthy, wanting to unlearn some things that I had learned growing up, and really just wanting to see who I could become once I rooted up those things that were holding me in bondage.
Yeah, because even me and Brie were talking about this right before we got on too. It's just to just feel you and Jenna. It's just that like going to therapy to me, the best description I can give of it is like sitting across from a mirror. It's like, and you are constantly having to look at different parts of yourself, and it feels like there are those self-defense mechanisms that I have against feeling, like my sister, she mentioned in the comments, that I have against like wanting to feel my feelings. They come out in therapy, but it's like looking at yourself like, what you gonna do now? Like, but some days I'll tell Bree this. So some days my therapist, he'll look at me and be like, so are you assuming things now? And I'll be like, who asked you? Like,
Right.
nobody asked you to be in my business. And then I realized that I did, because that's why I pay him to be in my business. And so it's just like being conscious of that, because when those self-defense mechanisms rise up in those places where you know you're actually trying to face yourself and take care of yourself, there is nowhere to run but to look at yourself and be like, all right, it's this girl.
And the beautiful thing about that is that I'm so glad that all three of us are on this Zoom, on this live, because the healing that we're getting in our own seasons right now, like we're helping other people heal, like of course through God. But what I wanted to say was going back to the whole avoidance and like stagnation thing. Like if you didn't have your therapist, or if we didn't have the experiences that we had, we would keep going over and over and over the same issues that we were struggling with. So for you, Jasmine, it may have been depression, but that could have showed up somewhere else in your life. And I just thank God that He's given us the space to see what we were put on this earth to do, and to actually face those things and help people in the ways that we are.
For sure. And so we talked a little bit about like how your mental health journey started, like how you realized that you needed to start taking care of yourself. And I know that all three of us are proponents for counseling and seeing somebody and talking to somebody. There are other ways to utilize therapy that may not be sitting in an office. And I want to give people some resources and just talk through what that looks like with y'all too. But tell me, before we do that, can you tell me what you do right now to maintain your mental health?
So I see a therapist. I've seen her for probably almost about 2-ish years now. And the one thing I would say as a tip is the first therapist you go to may not be your therapist, and that is okay. So I went through 2 before I got to the one I have now, who I've been with for probably about 1.5 years, 2-ish years. I don't know, I lose track. But I've been with her for a while, and I also take medication. And so my big thing that I always say is that medication made me an average person, but therapy made me a healthy person. So that's
out here. You need to write a poem or something.
So that's kind of my like tagline of my life, is that that's why I'm so big on therapy, because you can take medicine and be average, but you need to be in therapy to be healthy. And I think that goes for everyone.
Yeah, for me, I'm a quote Dr. Anita Phillips. I love that woman to death. If y'all don't know who Dr. Anita Phillips is, please go check her out. But her quote that she's known for is, "Prayer is a strategy, but therapy is a weapon." Or I'm sorry, prayer is a weapon, therapy is a strategy. Therapy is big. Of course, you guys have learned in y'all's program that we can't be the counselor and not be the client. So I think it's very important that we take it upon ourselves to get the counseling that we need so that we can go into this profession healthy. Definitely recommend that for those that are also seeking to be in a counseling program. Through this pandemic, I've learned that there are a lot of things that God has gifted me with that I didn't know, but thank God, in a sense, for this pandemic. So I would say painting has been something that I've enjoyed doing for self-care. Cooking, I love cooking. Jasmine, I know you love cooking too. I love cooking. I love being creative, and it's really a form of therapy in itself. Like being able to create something new and like say like I did that. Like it's really self-empowering. Also spending time with Jesus, reading scripture, worshiping, listening to music, getting involved in community groups and Bible studies and things like that has also really helped me in my journey.
Yeah, I agree with everything that y'all said. I think that therapy has been a game changer for me, for sure. A game changer in me and how I am mentally healthy, and just in being able to be consistent in the practice of maintaining my mental health. Also, exercise is something that's super, like, it's not something that I enjoy. I do not go to the gym and be like, oh, I just want to do this today. I enjoy being outside. And so when I was walking, when it was outside, I liked that. But now it's cold outside and I don't enjoy the cold. So I don't go outside anymore. But I've been going to the gym, and I think even looking at the research behind combating depression and how helpful exercise actually is, it's almost, if I want to say, it is just as helpful as being on medication. Those endorphins that it creates for you. Exercise can do that. Also, there's this thing that we talked about earlier on even the starting point page about cinema therapy and just using movies that cultivate joy in order to be a distraction. But kind of, there's a show, This Is Us. Y'all, if you watch This Is Us, let us know in the comments. I'm gonna tell y'all, I stopped watching it. I'm gonna tell you the truth, because I didn't need to cry that much. Don't nobody like TV don't need to do that to me. I don't need to go through that with you guys. That's fine. You go on your own. So I stopped watching it. But I remember specifically watching that show with my dad. And I remember there's a point in that show where at the very beginning where his dad passes away. And I remember like going through those emotions with him and being like, I feel like it's a mirror to my life. I think using TV, if you're going to be watching TV, to process what is going on in your own life, to allow you the space to kind of be outside of your own situation and watch it and process it too. And then using TV to be able to be like, oh, I just want to laugh. I have had a hard week. Let me just watch something that's going to give me some joy. Like, I'm not saying that you to go and like veg out on TV all the time, but I'm saying that using TV strategically can even be a way for you to take care of yourself and to be able to mentally detach from what's going on in your life while still processing what's going on in your life. Another thing that I would encourage people to do is be conscious of your community. Be conscious of the environment that you place yourself in. It's something that the book that This Is Your Brain on Joy, it talks about like enriching your outer world. And so making sure that your outer world and the community that you put yourself in, that it is cultivating a space of joy for you. Like, be sure that you're doing that on a regular basis, because your environment will change the way that you think, whether you think so or not. And that includes the people that you're putting yourself around. So it's not just like the place that you in, but who is around you and what are they saying? Like, what are those voices that are feeding into you on a regular basis? And I would just be conscious of that. There's also the scent of happiness. I know that aromatherapy is super big these days. Jenna is into the oil. And so
Oily girl.
being conscious of that and making sure that you're using that as a resource for you. Music is another way to just enrich your outer world and engage. Humor, because I love to laugh. Y'all know that already. I think that I'm hilarious. I feel like I could be a stand-up comedian if I really wanted to be one day, but I don't. But I could if I wanted to be. Also just in thinking about your outer world and then how to enrich your inner world, right? And so enriching your inner world through books, making sure that you're reading on a regular basis, reading things that can be helpful to you, through relaxation practices, which is like meditation. Somebody talked about meditation earlier in the comments too. Mindfulness, and mindfulness don't just mean like sitting down somewhere and being like, like that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness is actually taking the time to think about what you're thinking about. When you start to feel that anger rise up in you, when you start to feel that sadness rise up in you, when you start to feel those feelings of like, what's wrong with me, rise up in you, going back through your day and through your week and tracing what has happened. It may have brought me to this point. Like, this isn't just come out of anywhere. Let me not just put this thought off. Let me not just throw this thought out of my mind. Let me not just suppress this thought and act like it didn't happen. Because oftentimes we do that, and then we see those thoughts come back up, and they come up one of two ways. They come up by anger, or they come up by depression. So we put this thought off, and then we come up one day and somebody says something to us and we snap. And we're just like going off, and we wonder, where did that come from? Or somebody says one thing to us and we just melt, and we're like, I would just never be anything, like I just don't know what's wrong with me. And we think, where did that come from? And it comes from those times where we weren't mindful about what we were thinking about. We just allowed our thoughts to come and go as they please. And my pastor says this all the time, and I repeat it too, is don't treat that thought like it never came. Cast it down in Jesus' name. And so making sure that you're taking those thoughts captive, and that you're saying, why am I thinking this? What is this thought that I'm having? Let me address this thought so that it don't come back. Let me get to the root so that it don't come back. Like, that's what mindfulness really is more about. And then prayer and sleep. Make sure you sleep.
I love me some sleep.
Exclamation point, exclamation point.
Make sure you sleeping, because it's important. And then nutrition too, but we're not going to get too deep into nutrition today, but making sure that you're thinking about what you're eating about too. You're being mindful in all of those regards in your life. Those are just
listening to your body.
Listening to your body. Rest. Trust God enough to rest.
Right. Let him be God. You just lay down.
So if you, go ahead.
I love what you said about the mindfulness and the meditation. I really love the Headspace app with Andy Puttycombe, I think is his name. I love his voice. I find him super relaxing. And like the mindfulness activities they bring you through are really helpful. And even the Nike Run Club app has runs that are guided by Andy Puttycombe and the guy who, I don't remember his name, who does the Nike Run Club app. And I find those, I'll go out on a run, not always finishing the runs they have because they're kind of long, but I'll go out on a run and I'll be listening to their mindfulness like track they have. And that really helps me set my mind, clear my mind. I really enjoy the mindfulness meditation aspect of it.
Yeah. We're talking about
Go ahead.
We're talking about apps to use. I would definitely recommend the Calm app for people that struggle with anxiety, people that struggle with worry and stress. The Calm app is super amazing just because it really gets you in a place to be centered. If you're a Christian, it gives you scriptures that you can like meditate on. It gives you like some soothing sounds that you can listen to, and you can even do breath work, like doing deep breaths in and out if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety in an area. And another one I would say is I just had it on my mind. Oh, the I Am app. It's literally I Am if you go into your app store. It's for positive affirmations. So people that struggle with negative patterns of thinking, and people that, you know, are constantly worried about themselves and like has a lot of like negative self-talk, I would definitely recommend I Am. It's just a positive affirmation app for you to use. It says things like, I am worthy, I am confident, I am beautiful, I am healthy, I am breaking curses. You know, it just really reminds you of who you really are and who you're meant to be. So
Somebody asked us, I think this question is to you, Jenna, will you drop the Run app name again? I know it's the Nike Run, but I missed the name of the actual track.
It's Nike Run Club, and then if you go to, I think it's like their meditation runs. It's under the guided. So if you go to and you click guided runs, it's under meditation runs, and it's with Andy Puttycombe, and they're so good.
Yeah. I know that I tried it one time. I didn't run nowhere because, you know, I talk back to the people and they be like, you don't have to run as fast what are you saying? He's like, you don't have to run fast. Just make sure that you're listening to your body and that you're being conscious of how. And I was like, I'm going to listen and I'm going to walk, but I'm going to listen to
you. And they're like, you're at a point where you should be feeling pretty good right now. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And I'm like, you know,
give me a second. Let me get some water or something.
Yeah. It's like, okay, we're clearly not at the same level, but I'm with you in my mind.
Yes.
But you go, girl. You go ahead, go.
You're in better physical shape than I am, so I am not going to run with you, but I am going to mentally.
I'm not so sure about that these days, but you know.
Right.
I think that too, if we talked about this too on this Facebook page earlier this week, is talking about like questioning your thoughts. Bree talked a little about negative self-talk, and I know that's a bad habit for me. It has been in the past a bad habit for me, but I use the phrase put my feelings on trial quite often. And so I was talking to them about singing, and I do sing sometimes.
Not sang with an A, capital A, capital G, like sang.
Yeah, she sings real good.
Don't put too much on it. But I've been singing sometimes at my church. And I think that singing has helped me to be able to face like that everything won't always be perfect. Because there are times that I go back and I listen to that live and I'm like, take it off the internet. Do not put this out there. Like, let's turn it off. I'm not going to sing in my mic anymore. I don't want to do this. And that negative self-talk will be in my head, like, I will not sing anymore. Like, I'm just not going to stand up in front of nobody, and I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to quit the praise and worship team because I don't need to be singing in front of these people. And I was talking to my therapist about this one day, and I was crying, honestly. I was just like, this is too much. And he was like, well, let's put that on trial, Jazz. And I was like, okay. He said, has anybody told you that you needed to quit the praise and worship team because you just sound terrible? And I was like, well, no. He was like, well, when you finish, what did they say? And I was like, well, they said I did a good job. He was like, so when you're telling yourself that you shouldn't be on a praise and worship team, that you don't sing well enough to do that, did you just get on a praise and worship team because you just walked up there? Or did you have to audition? Did somebody else have to tell you that you could be on that? And I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, so all of these things that you're telling yourself, are they true? And I was like, sir, like you keep coming into my life, and I'm not asking you to do that. But
you in my business.
Don't do that. Don't do that. But I think that that's important because I know that that's a habit that a lot of people have. And when you start to experience those negative feelings, to be able to say, okay, what's the truth about this though? Is this for real? Like, what evidence do I have that supports this? And if you don't have evidence, it could just be that you just are negatively thinking about yourself. So let's retrain what the truth about those thoughts really are.
Right. And I had an experience like that with my therapist. She was in my business, and I was like, I literally told her in the session, I was like, you need to go ahead and back up real quick. And she started laughing, but she gave me an activity. She told me to take a piece of paper and literally in the session and write down all the positive things I think about myself, and then write down all the negative things I think about myself. And then she said in the next row, write down all the positive and negative things that you think other people think about you. And then I wrote that down. And then she said, write down all the positive and negative things that you think God thinks about you. And that exercise was so powerful because when I finished, I saw that a lot of the negative qualities that I had that I had wrote down were from me, not from others or from God. Like I know what scripture says about me. I know what my friends and family say about me, but I was so hard on myself. And I had to really like check myself and be like, Brianna, who called you that? Who said that to you? Like, who told you that you weren't adequate? Like, what?
Yeah.
So that's a really helpful tip that brought me a long way.
Because I would take this one time in the second grade when somebody looked at you wrong, and the rest of your life, you'd be like, nobody will ever understand because they said this to me. You'd be like,
I'm the biggest loser on the beach.
Right? Like, you lost kickball, baby. It's not, come on back.
Right.
But it's real feelings. I don't want to anybody's feelings because that's real feelings that you get. The other day I was talking to him about something in high school, and I was like, I feel childish because I don't want to talk to you about high school stuff. He was like, no, but that's formative years for you. Like that's when you started figuring out who you were. So let's talk about high school. And so just know, like reaching back into all that and knowing that kickball losing it may have done a lot of work in your heart. So you may have to go back and address that. And that's okay.
Right.
And the last question that I have for you today is if you, and put this in the comments too, if you're watching this, let us know too, because I think that it's a big part of my heart is encouraging young people. And so, and by young people, I know that we like semi-young, but I'm talking about like high school young people, is if you could go back to your teenage self and give them some sort of advice about mental health, what would you say to yourself?
I think for me, the biggest piece of advice I would say is it is okay to ask for help. That I don't have to try to handle it all by myself. I would try to hide like how I was feeling from my parents, which is so dumb because they're like the most supportive people in the world. And I would try to hide the feelings and emotions I was having and try to handle them all on my own. And so I think I would just tell any like teenager now, or even myself back then, that it's okay to ask for help. And then also another big thing is the most important thing I think I've learned in therapy is that feelings don't last forever. And so I would tell my teenage self that, because it's okay to feel what you're feeling, but you don't necessarily need to act on it because those things don't last forever. And most of the time, whatever you're feeling, if you give it an hour or two, you probably won't be feeling that anymore. And you'll see those feelings subside maybe a couple of days. But I think that's one of the most important things I've learned in therapy is that you can feel those feelings and you can ride them out, but you don't necessarily need to act on them. And I think when I was younger, I was big on acting on however I was feeling because I'm more of a feelings-based person. And so I think that's one big piece of advice I would give my younger self is just like ride out the feelings, but don't send that text maybe, or, something like that.
That's good.
I got a whole list. I got a list of things I would have told myself to do. I would say number one, practice more self-care than other care. A lot of the moments where I found myself in those places of darkness was because I spent so much of my time caring for other people that I wasn't worried about how I was feeling or how I was going along in the day. I would also say practicing being more assertive, speaking up for myself. I would tell Bree like, hey, like they crossed a couple lines. I need you to go back and say something. I'm huge on boundaries now. So I would say set boundaries. For people that don't know what boundaries are a protection for you regarding anything that may feel like a violation or a form of, harm or anything like that. So definitely set boundaries because you want to make sure that the people that are in your corner are supporting you, but that you're also getting the amount of self-care and respect that you need in order to be healthy. What else did I write down? Not being afraid to break generational curses. Like it's okay to go.
To preach to. You want to? Okay, we just gonna.
It's okay to not be like your family. Like it's okay to not want to stay in a specific area or to stay in a specific job. or field, it's okay to say no, that I can't make it to that family event, or I can't make it to your friends, I can't make it to that party, or I can't make it to that outing, um, to really just be mindful about, just what you're saying, what you're speaking, and who you're letting in your space. What was another one that I had? Celebrating the little things, because I was super critical of myself growing up. And so I would say celebrate the amount of work, that you got accomplished that day. Celebrate, that one friend that you made, even if you wanted to have 5 friends that day, like you made a new friend today at lunch, like celebrate that. Don't get so boggled down with like what you didn't accomplish that day. And the last one I would say is just really making sure that we can focus on what's in our control, rather than focusing on things that aren't in our control. Because if we do that, we typically just start losing it. So really focusing on what's in my circle, in my locus of control, and not really getting sidetracked.
That's good.
That's all I got.
Thank y'all so much. We got a couple people in the comments that have shared what they would tell themselves. So I'm going to share those with you. Make sure that you're reading the comments, because y'all been in there tonight talking to us, and I've been reading them and encouraged myself. And so Alicia Johnson, who is my sister, by the way, shout out to my sister. She said, I would tell myself, you train people how to treat you, that there's nothing wrong with being sensitive. Speak and own your truth and resist the urge to take on other people's problems. Whew.
Yes, it's that codependency.
There's freedom in the no. That's good. Mm-hmm. And Naticia, shout out to you, Naticia. Hey, girl. It said, giving yourself grace. That's the part. That's the part. Christina Spears, she said, don't internalize the shame that people put on you for thinking differently and not conforming. Don't internalize the shame. That's good. I think that leads into my advice. What I would tell my younger self is, first, that you are not your thoughts. Like the things that you're thinking about yourself, those negative thoughts that may come up, that you try to define the rest of your life by that. Like those things don't define you. Don't define yourself by the shame that may try to come up, by the guilt that may try to arise. Don't define yourself by the limitations that you may put on yourself, by what other people may tell you about yourself. Don't define yourself by those things. Only define yourself by what God says that you are, which leads me into the other advice that I would give myself, which is trust the God in you. Trust what God says about you. And that I'm not saying that like we all baby gods, like don't hear me say that. But I mean that the Holy Spirit resides within you, and trust that voice as he's speaking to you. Not to because that when we operate out of a place of fear, we're not really trusting that voice that's inside of us that's saying, like, I gave you creativity. I gave you the desire to want to mix art and therapy. I gave you the desire to want to cook in association with that. Like, but just because you haven't seen it before, don't mean you can't trust me with what I'm putting in you. And so I'm just saying that to encourage people that if there is something that's in you, maybe different from what is around you, like trust the voice of the Holy Spirit, even over your own fear and your own negative thoughts. And that's what being an adult is really about. It's about giving up. It's about, there are these things that could knock me down, but I'm not going to stay down. Like, because I trust God enough to get up. And that's what the beauty of being a Christian. And if you're not a Christian, I would love to hear what keeps you getting up, because I know that it's my faith that keeps me getting up. And so, yeah, that's all we got tonight, y'all. Unless y'all have anything last that you would like to share? Y'all was so good tonight.
Last thing I want to say is when Bree mentioned boundaries, I forgot that one. Boundaries. Literally could not be more important. I used to think they were bad and that people put boundaries up to keep me away, but now I know that they are the most healthy thing. So boundaries, don't be scared of boundaries.
Yeah. And just to reiterate that, when we think about boundaries, like even the United States has boundaries. Like there's certain qualifications that you need to have to be in the United States. There's certain borders that are up around to protect us from outsiders, or to protect us from illegal substances or things that do not belong here. So with boundaries, like be careful about the people that you let into your life, about the people that know about you know, what's going on that's been bothering you that has caused you to go to counseling or whatever. Like, be mindful of, even for myself, like if I wanted to work out, like a boundary for me would be like, hey Bree, like it's time to get up. Like you gotta go ahead and get that workout in, or you gotta go in and finish that assignment. Like boundaries are so essential. They're so essential.
Oh, this leaves me with this, and we're gonna close on this, y'all. And so thank you guys for joining us tonight. We've been on for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 7:55, so we're still on time. And that is execute. Execute. I know that I am a person of overthinking. I will overthink something to the death of it. Like I will just be like, I'm gonna make a plan and I'm gonna make a backup plan for that plan. And I'm gonna make a backup plan for that plan just in case both of these plans fall. Oh, something's finna work. But then I never end up doing anything because I'm just making plans. And so my encouragement to my younger self and to people that are watching would be make the plan, but then do something. Don't just be a plan maker. Like if make sure that you're doing those things that you set out to do, that you're just not thinking about doing those things. Because hopefully tonight we gave you some starting points in how to do that. So I love y'all. God loves y'all. Hey, Jenna Mama. Hey, Miss Lisa. It's nice to see you. So yes. Oh, wait. Naticia has a question. We was finna go, but we got a question. It says, what do those conversations look like when you talk to your family and friends about new boundaries that you're setting for yourself?
I'll speak on that real quick. So I mentioned earlier that the reason I started mental health and stuff like that was because of the issues I had with my parents. The testimony in that is because of the boundaries that I've set. Now I can call my parents up and be like, hey, like this just happened for me, or hey, like, you know, this is going on. Like, are you going to support things like that? Like now I can call them and talk to them about anything, and they're supportive of it. But boundaries for your family or friends can look like, hey, like I'm not gonna be able to make this event, but I hope everything goes well. Just simply saying no. Or even, I know sometimes in the Black community, parents are very overprotective and they want to know everything that's going on, and they want to know like how they can fix everything for you. So even a boundary could be like, I appreciate your opinion, but I don't need it right now. Or I appreciate your opinion, but I think I got it from here. So don't get too, I guess, into, oh my gosh, like I just set a boundary and like start feeling guilty about that. Like settle into that guiltiness. Like it's okay to feel guilty about a decision that you make, because ultimately it's going to help you to be a more healthier version of yourself. And it doesn't mean that you don't love that person or that you don't care for them or you don't want anything to do with them, but it just means like, you know, you're taking more time for yourself, and you're more aware of what you need and what you don't need.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think boundaries mean you do love the person, because if you're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of the relationship, which shows love. So
Come on. That's good.
And one more. I got one more thing. I just popped up. My therapist told me that my ability to help does not represent my validation. So my validation should not come from me wanting to help people. So I know we may have friends who may go through a lot of things, but it does not mean that you don't love them if you set a boundary with them. It just means that, you know, you care for them enough to say like, hey, you should probably seek counseling, or, you know, I love you, girl, but we got to figure out something else to do, because we can't keep making me anxious about your anxiety.
Right.
So,
and knowing too, when you set those boundaries, that it may be painful at first. Let's just be
okay.
What it looks like to make the boundary that it may, because you've created a habit that is not that boundary. And so creating this boundary now is going to be, it may be difficult for you, but that doesn't mean you stop because it's difficult. And I say that because in my own experience, my family is super, super, super tight, like super tight. My sister and my mom are my sisters and my mom are my best friends. And so I love them with all of my heart. I show up to my sister's house. I used to show up at my sister's house at any time that I wanted to go over there. I would just be like, and she has 3 kids and a husband. And I would just be like, I'm here now, like, coming in. And and not realizing that the family dynamic has changed. Not that it has changed, like that she don't love me anymore, that I don't want to go over there anymore. But then when you have a husband and you have 3 kids, you have your own family dynamic that is built there too. So in order to be respectful of that, a boundary had to be set that before I show up, I'm a call.
Right.
Like, and I'm gonna say that on y'all's family day, like that, I'm just not gonna come over there on this family day because I know that that's the day that y'all set aside for each other. And being able to say, and it's still hard for me. My sister is laughing in the comments because it is still difficult. Like I will drive over there and be sitting outside and be like, oh, I didn't call before I got here. Oh my goodness. Maybe I should just go back home. It is difficult for me. And when the boundary was first set, it was hard for me to message her and say, hey, is it okay if I come over now? And her to be like, no, not right now, sis. Can you wait till later? Because I'll be like, oh, I just want to do what I want to do. I don't want to do what you tell me to do. But in order for other people to respect your boundaries, you have to be respectful of theirs too. And so, and even if that is difficult, like it's not bad to have a boundary. And so that's my final little part that I will add to that. Thank you all for joining the starting point tonight. I love y'all, and we will see y'all next Monday. But make sure you like and share this video too. If you got anything from it, that you like it and that you share it. All right. Peace out.
Bye.